Alrighty, hello everybody. I can see the chat room's already got a few people in there. Good to see you turned up nice and early. If you could just let me know that you can see the countdown, you can hear it, and you can hear me over the top of it, that'd be brilliant. Just to know the technicals are working. What else I've got to tell you? Oh yeah, bit of a different one tonight. It was going to be an editing one. I'll tell you about that when we get started. But yeah, this one I wanted you to sit in on a conversation between me and Brian. Me and my mate Brian Matiash, bit of a conversation, and also get your thoughts on something. We didn't want to waste it, so hence why a bit of a change to the schedule. Alrighty, thank you for joining me for another week. Now, obviously, I did say last week that we'd be changing things up, and it would be a guest one week, a bit of an edit the next week, and that would be like a rolling on thing. However, it's changed. As you can tell, tonight has changed. I've got my friend Brian Matiash, who's been a guest on here twice now, so this is his third one. It's a hat trick for Brian. I couldn't resist getting him on because I wanted to talk about something with him that we have regular chats about, and I wanted to share it with you so that you could become part of the conversation, because I think it'd be really valuable to hear what you think about this. Obviously, the title of this was mobile versus mirrorless. Now, let me just say before I do my admin that it's not a case of what's better than, you know, what kind of state are we at? Is mobile now completely competitive with the mirrorless or the DSLR? That's not what this is about, but we'll reveal all when we kind of get into this. But let me just get through the admin. Again, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see so many familiar names in the chat and so many new ones as well, which is cool. But bit of admin for you. The first thing I wanted to tell you was, so earlier part of this week, last week, I kind of set myself a challenge to see if I could retouch an old image of mine, one that I think it kind of put me on the map. I think a few people this is where I got noticed a little bit from this one particular image by certain people. I wanted to see, could I edit this image, which last time when I did it was heavily reliant on being edited in Photoshop because of what Photoshop offers. However, there's been quite a few advances in Lightroom, and we're talking desktop and classic and mobile since I did that. So I thought I set myself a challenge. Could I retouch this image using only Lightroom? And I was amazed that I was able to. In fact, if I'm perfectly honest, I actually prefer this edit to the one that I did originally. So what I want to ask you, I'm going to put a little thing in the, I'll do it as we go through this, but I'm going to put a poll in the chat. And I want to ask you, because a few people have asked me if I would do this, but I want to make sure that it's done and it's what the majority would like to see. Should I put together a mini course, just a mini course, showing all the retouching steps that are done on that image to get it to that stage there? I'll show you the actual before one in a moment. Should I do a mini course showing all the retouching steps in Lightroom? So that's the poll. That's going to be the question. Should I do that? The other thing to sort of mention about was, if I dive over to, let me just bring up my Lightroom just here. So if I go over to my screen, which is this one, this is a picture I took a couple of days ago. It's just to update you, because every now and again I'm going to let you know that I've done this. Over in my Lightroom community profile page, I've got that image here. I've added it in there where you can actually click on it and you can see all of the retouching steps that went into that particular picture as well. So they're all down there. You can also download it as a preset, and if you want to, you can also edit it yourself. I've allowed it to be remixed. All the links for this I'll put in the description part of the video tomorrow and on the blog. So that's two things there. And the other thing was what tonight was intended to be originally, but I couldn't resist getting Brian on. It was to do with this here, and that was where I was asking you to any images that you think I should you'd like me to have a look at retouching, maybe problem images, images that maybe would have been considered by yourselves to be throwaways, ones that you think, no, it's underexposed, there's things wrong with it, I can't fix those. If you've got any of those kind of images, the offer was there for you to maybe create an album or a collection, depending on whether you're working in Lightroom Desktop or Classic. Share it with me, and I'll randomly pick out a couple, and I'll do a session where I go through how I would retouch those images to kind of make something from them. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've done some work recently with Adobe where I can't say what the work was, but it's meant that I've ended up retouching a lot of images that weren't mine, that were problem images. And I can't believe how much I've learned about using Lightroom. You know, and I considered myself to be quite, adept at using Lightroom, but it's forced me to do stuff in Lightroom that I hadn't even considered because they weren't my images. There was problems that I hadn't encountered. So that's the offer there. But I'll kind of let you know more about that as we go towards the end of this. But I'm going to bring my friend Brian in. But before I do that, I'm going to share my screen again, because I'm not going to play any kind of promo reel or anything like that. But I will show you just some of Brian's images here. Let me just get these up here. So I asked Brian just to share a few images with me that he had made or captured rather and edited using his using his iPhone, okay? Because that's one of the things we want to talk about tonight. The iPhone, it's like a mirrorless versus mobile or whatever, mobile versus mirrorless. But I want to just show you just some of the images here that Brian had taken with his mobile. And I mean, there's one in particular, I think it's the next one. No, it's the next one. There's one here. I love the editing on this one. That's cool there. But where is it? Well, that one, I love that one. That one I love. I love the post-production on that one. So yeah, Brian, I like that. So all these images here, great, great images. So that's the kind of thing that I want to talk about, doing, you know, photography with your phone versus where we're at now with it in comparison to using mirrorless and DSLR. Because those of you who maybe tuned in to me and Brian before, when we did talk about this, you'll know that we were kind of level pegging. We were level pegging, but Brian's kind of got some different opinions now to me, which I think is good to talk about. But let me unmute him. And I haven't got a promo roll, Brian, but I've got this for you. There you go. Have some of that. So,
love it.
Brian, I'm not going to give you another play of your promo reel. No, that's done.
It's all good.
That.
Done. Yeah.
But,
Too much of a good thing is never a good thing.
But mate, thank you for joining me. I know obviously with the time difference, thanks for just putting some time aside for this. You're always, I mean, I know we have regular chats, but to come and do this is brilliant. But you'll have heard me saying at the start there, mate, that obviously we have these chats all the time about mobile and accessories and things like that. But to kind of kick things off, I want to just, I know we alluded to this yesterday when we were chatting, but can you just kind of give me, what are your thoughts now when it comes to mobile stroke, mirrorless, normal camera? I hate doing that, but I had to. Normal camera thing. What's your kind of feelings now? How have they changed from when we last spoke on a live about all this kind of stuff?
Sure. I mean, I still think that mobile it's amazing in terms of even where we were just a few years ago to where we are now. You can't take anything away. However, in certain situations, I felt like, for me personally, I was crowbarring mobile into basically what's the phrase, like a square peg through a round hole.
Yeah,
I was like, get this thing to work in situations where it just didn't. And specifically that has to do with bird photography. Now, bird photography was one of those things that came onto me. I didn't seek it out, but we moved here I live in Southern Florida, South Florida. And we moved here a couple years ago, and I'm a landscape photographer. Primarily, that's what I love. But there aren't a lot of landscapes. What there are a lot of birds, lots of birds. And that's what I mean by crowbarring, where I would take this thing and I would try to get the shots that I ultimately needed my mirrorless. So to answer your question, it's purpose driven. I feel like I could get, for most of the photography that I enjoy doing, I can get amazing results with this thing and I enjoy it. And when I say this thing, I think I'm also with you, like as minimal of a kit as possible. I'm sure we'll talk about that versus, you know, this thing, which is gigantic, and that thing where, there. Yeah. That is my primary lens. That's 100 to 400 with a 1.4 times teleconverter on it.
All right. Okay.
And I mean, as you know, Glenn, that there's just a beastly setup, but it works. It is amazing for that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my answer.
So it's interesting there then that you didn't, at no point did you say that the reason for it was the quality. It wasn't the quality that seemed to be the issue. It was, if anything, I'm guessing I kind of hear it here, it's the range that it was enabling you to get. So, you know, obviously some of the pictures that we saw as I went through your Lightroom thing there, we talked about it before we went on air, they were close up. They were birds that become accustomed to members of the, you know, people walking by. They weren't scared. They'd stay close. You could take a shot. Easily done, you know, with your phone. But the kind of stuff you're doing with that beast of a camera there, which I know you recently got, was it the Sony A1 II something? Yeah, I mean, it's a beast. It really is. Lovely, lovely camera. But but obviously the stuff that you have with that allows you to have that reach and do other things. But I mean, where I am at with this, and this is something we talk about a lot. It was something I was talking a lot to with my friend Steve Healy today when we were out doing some stuff. I am primarily a portrait guy, you know, and any portraits I do are going to be with my main camera, which just happens to be a Sony. That's what I chose to use. I have tried taking portraits with my iPhone, but I just wasn't. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong with it or what. I did speak to Lisa Carney about this, but I wasn't overly happy. I think maybe it's because I am a portrait photographer. I was naturally critical of what results I'd be getting, whereas the actual seascape stuff, landscape, it's all new to me. So what I'm getting with the phone, I am overly, you know, really, really happy with. And the more I do, the happier I'm getting with it. So where I am with it is, I'm just loving going out. I mean, I'm finding it really hard. I'm having a bit of a battle at the moment. That's the thing. I'm really battling at the moment with this feeling inside that I don't know where it's coming from, but I feel like I should take these pictures I'm doing, these seascape pictures. I feel like I should take them with my mirrorless camera. I don't know why I feel that way, but I just do. But when I go out with the intention of doing it, like I did today with Steve, I packed my bag. I included my Sony and a 16-35, but it didn't even come out the bag. I don't want to. OM system, you know, as you know, I told you about this. They sent me a camera, you know, and multiple lenses, like this with a very, very wide range up to a telephoto. And I've been out with it a couple of times, and sounds bad, but I just can't be bothered. Because it seems to kills it for me.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
You know, you and I, we talked about this a lot. Also about a year ago, we were talking about, I remember us wanting to be kind of the tip of the spear, pushing forward the mobile photography side of things. And so some of the photos that you shared of the album that I shared with you, from Arches National Park. So not this past December, last December 2023. Every Christmas we go to my in-laws in southern Utah, and we'll go to like a state park or a national park. This year we went to Zion. Last year was Arches. And I was just thinking about this while you were speaking. Back then, the kind of ethos that I had was, I'm going to challenge myself, emphasis on the word challenge myself to use this to get photos. And that mindset puts you in this almost like, well, if I'm challenging myself, probably that means that like I'm expecting some sort of hardship or some sort of a lesser than experience. And I'm going to rise to the occasion with this thing, and I'm going to try, you know, to get good shots.
I'm going to prove them.
I'm going to prove them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of mindset is problematic, because the truth is this is an exceptionally capable camera. And I stand by the fact that so much of what goes into making a good photo is standing in front of the right thing at the right time. And by time, I mean the lighting conditions and the weather. Some things, obviously, you have no control. And so the camera will do the heavy lifting if you put the right ingredients in front of it. Of course, there's always going to be an asterisk. I'm sorry, you know, for things like the kind of bird photography that I've been doing, the mobile device just isn't there for a few reasons, most of which has to do with optics and the ability to really throw your focal range. I asked you this the other day, same thing, like, do you use digital zoom? Neither of us do. I do not. If it's not optical, I'm not using it. And so the truth is, like, it's a pleasure for like landscape photography. I'm happy to just use my phone. I can get great shots. And there are some things I do, and we can talk about this, I'm sure. There are some things that I do lament that I really, you know, don't jive with Apple calling it a professional camera, a pro camera. We're just not, there are a few things that are just simply missing for me. But for the most part, that whole I'm going to challenge myself, that's a mindset that I think I've retired. Like, no, this is my camera. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to get as good of a photo as I can.
I'm just listening to what you're saying there, but I'm also kind of keeping an eye on some of the comments that are coming in. They're really interesting.
Oh, sure.
And I don't want to leave lots of them to the end, because I think some of them are relevant. I want to just see if there's a couple here. Now, I know, again, Steve, who I was out with today, Steve's just put, my God, that's big, isn't it? Let me just make that a bit smaller there. There we go. There you go. Working on the fly. I'm just the opposite, phone versus camera. I just like the feeling of I know what Steve's saying there. Steve's basically saying, because Steve also, you know, he upgraded to get the iPhone and what have you, and he was going to do some things, but he likes the tactile feel of using a camera. That's kind of the way that Steve is. And I get that. But that there kind of quickly brings me on to something I was going to maybe talk about later on, which is to do with the handling of the phone, which is something that we are going to go all over the place today. I know we are. But it's the handling of the phone. Holding this device, I feel sometimes that it's not that I don't feel like I'm taking a picture. I feel like I'm going to drop the thing. So I like to have a good grip of it. So what I've done, let me just bring this up here. I know this is all going out of sync, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to throw this out there.
That's how we do things, Glenn.
Yeah, I know. I've just ordered this, as I told you. I've ordered this thing here, and it's called the ShiftCam Pro Grip. ShiftCam's the name of the company, the Pro Grip. And that's the picture there, Brian, I was going to show you to see how far down it goes when you actually put it into the setup. And it also here kind of charges the phone and what have you. So what this thing is basically, anybody who remembers oh, blimey, that's just me there. Anybody who remembers when I had Russell Brown on a live, he talked about doing all of his mobile photography and how he has to have it in something. And that little device there, you slide your phone into it and you get that tactile grip like you have around the side of the camera, but it also gives you an analog style shutter button to take a picture. Now, it does obviously connect it on Bluetooth. That one there, Russell raves about. I know you've experienced it. You got a similar one, but there was issues that you had with it. But I like the idea of having that where I can press it, because I like to photograph storms. And I love going out on the coast when the waves are going, the water's all over the place. But what I have found when I'm taking pictures with my iPhone is that if the screen gets a bit of water on it, sometimes I go to tap the screen and it won't actually activate. Or if I try to press the volume button, which you can use to take a picture, the app I'm using doesn't allow it to do that. So it just changes the volume up and down. So that's what I'm hoping this ShiftCam thing is going to allow me to have. And also I think it might, make people think, what on earth are you using there? And just to answer Justin's question, John Austin's question, you only talk about Apple. What about Android? John, I can only talk about iPhone. Brian can only talk about iPhone. But when we're talking about iPhone, we're talking mobile photography. All right. So that's basically what we're saying. All right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that. But with me, like I said, I'm really struggling, Brian, with this thing. Should I go out and try it with should I save myself some money and not get these circular polarizer and neutral density that I was going to get for these lenses for my Sony? Should I save the money, or should I just go for it and do it with the phone, or what? This is what I'm struggling with. And I don't know why I'm struggling with it. It just kind of feels like, I don't know.
I mean, it really depends. So this is what we were referring to. So this is I showed this to you yesterday. This case is for the 15 Pro Max. It's by Polar Pro, and it's got this kind of metal protector plate, and then the case has these rails on the top and bottom, and so you can attach this grip, which does give you the kind of ergonomics that it's like this is the cabinet of the camera. And then this is an additional accessory that they make, a Bluetooth shutter button, which I told you yesterday is very, very unreliable. In fact, they don't even make one anymore. They've updated the case for the 16 Pro line, and I've confirmed this is not compatible, and I don't see another button on their website. You'd press the button, nothing would happen. You'd press the button, it would take 100 photos. And it's very, very frustrating. That's the thing. I think we're both sensitive to, like, if I'm going to use it, it has to be reliable. And that is something to be said about the camera. I mean, of course, the ergonomics, the heft of it, the tactileness of all these buttons, large LCD, which the phone is a giant LCD to, you can't, although it is kind of difficult in bright light sometimes to see, whereas if you have an optic or an electronic viewfinder. But there is something to this. I know, I mean, barring some catastrophic mechanical failure, when I press this button, it's going to take the photo. So there's that. I get, but that is not enough for me to just say I'm never going to use mobile. Like, I'm a huge fan of mobile. For me, to answer your question really quickly about the gear stuff, my answer would be to invest in the most versatile solution possible. And what I mean by that, speaking of filters, so I showed you the case. The thing probably that I love the most is this thing here. This is a 67 millimeter filter adapter that is designed for this, where it slides in. It is here. It is not going anywhere. And so then by making versatile, all of my filters, I have magnetic filters by Maven. These are all 82 millimeter in diameter. And so what I'll do is I have a 67 to 82 millimeter step-up ring. And it's made by Maven, so that on the other side of the 82, it's magnetic. So all I need to do is snap on my polarizer or my ND filter. So that would be my, recommendation is buy the filter, so that in the event that you do want to switch over to your Sony system, odds are you don't have a lens that supports anything wider than 82, unless you have like, one of those 14 millimeter with a bulbous front element type of thing. So as long as you have the respective adapter ring, your filters will work. For me, though, Glenn, my problem is, I alluded to this earlier, and I don't know if you want to talk about this later on, but the whole, like, the limitations imposed. I know you run into one in particular very often with the resolution based on how you want. And for me, the same thing. Like, when I think of a pro camera, what that means to me is if I want to expose for 10 actual seconds, meaning the sensor is recording for 10 seconds straight, and I'll take care of the ND filter to cover the light. Like, that's on me. I can't do that with this phone. The maximum that an iPhone can expose for is 1 second, and then you rely on software to blend the multiple images. In most cases, depending on the subject that you're photographing, that might not be a problem. In other cases, depending on the shutter speed that you're using, you'll see that kind of like jagged repeating pattern.
Yeah.
And so that is frustrating to me because, of course, this camera doesn't have a shutter. There's no there's no diaphragm to the lens, meaning an aperture. So it's a fixed aperture. So point is,
I've heard rumors about that coming though. I don't know if you have.
Great.
Yeah.
I have. It's one of those things, like,
I think it was on Mac rumors, mine, but
yeah, exactly. And you take it all with a grain of salt, because they're already talking about the iPhone 18, and we haven't even seen the iPhone 17.
I know, yeah.
So, point is that a lot of the stuff that I want to do, we can kind of massage or get around it with computational photography, which is the name of the game. You can't actually get a 1.4 f1.4 aperture, but you can use computational photography to simulate one. I mean, masking technology has gotten so amazing that you can simulate it. But
right, okay,
yeah. So that's kind of my thing.
All right, let me just dive in there, because you mentioned computational photography. Now, that is something that I have heard people who are kind of against the whole mobile iPhone, Android photography kind of thing. They say, yeah, but there's a lot of computational stuff going on. There is a lot of that going on in cameras nowadays anyway. And I'll give the OM system one, I'll give that as an example. My friend Steve, who's got that, the one I was sent, that there has got, built-in neutral density filters, built-in graduated neutral density filters. Now that's all computational, but it's okay because it's in a camera. But if it's in a phone, you know, it's kind of, that's, do you know what I mean? It's those kind of arguments that I just kind of like, oh, God's sake. It's, but I mean, I hear what you're saying there about the kit. Now, I just want to bring up a couple of things here. Again, I'm trying to multitask here, which for a guy is challenging.
Well, there's a question there by Phil that I really am interested in. I think it's
is it the bottom, this one here?
Yes. Yes.
Go on then.
Yeah.
So Phil has put, if you're pro, say gear doesn't matter, so why do you still have the best if you think a phone will be okay? Go for it then, Brian.
So it's all, and I said this before, it's all purpose driven. The photography that I am kind of, that is most available to me these days, like I said, is bird photography. And this camera, this is Sony's flagship camera. This, I believe, is $6,500 US, which is obscene. However, I've used it, I got it a week and a half ago. I've used it 4 times. If you're into bird photography, if you're into sports photography, if you're into action photography, the features that this has have paid with dividends already. Specifically things like pre-capture, where I can choose to have the camera buffer up to 1 second of photos, raw photos in the buffer. As soon as I press the shutter button, it commits those photos and then it continues taking on. That, I've gotten shots of birds in the past few days that I just simply wouldn't have gotten because of that. So yeah, does gear doesn't matter? First of all, I don't think either of us said gear doesn't matter. But I will say that gear matters when you have when you know the need that you have and you know how to use it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Fit for purpose and stuff like that. There's things coming in here. There's one by Judy that I definitely want to bring up. But I noticed Steve, my mate Steve's put here, if you've got NDs and grads in your phone. To answer that, Steve, you kind of have. Because if you imagine now, and this is something, it's an interesting point you bring up there, Steve, because this is something that kind of throws people who are new to photography when all they've used before is a phone, and then you give them a regular camera. They don't understand how when they take a picture that the foreground and everything is nice and the person's nicely lit, but the sky's white. Why isn't the sky detail there? Whereas when you use a phone, your mobile phone, it computationally kind of does, you know, the sky's going to be exposed, the person's exposed. So there is kind of like ND in there computationally where it's figuring it all out, do multiple exposures, I guess is what you'd say it's doing. So it's kind of like that. It's an interesting point here that Judy brings up. And Judy's put, if you're buying accessories for your phone to be like a camera, to feel like a camera, then why don't you use your camera? Now, you're gonna have your answer to that, but I'm gonna say for me is that the way that the phone works is very different to the way the regular camera works, and I like the way the phone works for doing the seascapes, not my portraits, but the seascapes. The only thing I want to get kit for me to answer this question is number one, so that I don't drop the phone. That's why I want this shift cam thing. So I don't want to drop in. Just so happens that we're used to having that nice tactile kind of, you know, grip on the camera. So that's what I want to get that for. I also, if I'm taking pictures of water and it's not long exposure where you're getting that kind of cloudiness in the water, or if I'm taking pictures of like vehicles and stuff like where you got windows with my phone, which I intend to do soon. I'm taking a picture of my car at a great place called 𝐶𝐻𝐻 Gorge. Got a new car. I'm going to take some pictures of it. I want to do it with a phone, but I don't want to have the windows all looking all reflection. I want to get a circular polarizer just in front of the mobile phone so that I can actually cut the reflections on the glass. So it's minimal kit. Now, I know my mate Steve's watching this, and I'm not kind of bringing him up just, you know, here Steve. I'm not doing it for that. But Steve, when me and Steve chat, there's lots of things that we talk about that makes me really think, and one of them was today. And again, I'll bring up what Steve mentioned today about, because we had a bit of a game today. It was a bit of fun when he had his main camera, I had my phone. There's a lot of well, I didn't have to do it. Just joking between the two of us. That's the way that we muck about. But there was something that Steve mentioned. He'd come down to Lyme Regis. And he's sitting on this bench near where the cob is. And if you see my pictures, you'll know what the cob is, this kind of structure that goes out into the water. And as he sat there, there's these birds all gathered round in front of him. And he sat there with his camera and he's like, oh, I want to take a picture of them. But he said, I'm sure he said today, he said, I want to take a picture of them, but I had the wrong lens on. So I tried to, by the time I changed the lens, or wanted to change the lens, the birds had gone away. Now, what I love about the mobile phone is that it gives me this freedom that I don't have to worry about other kit and what choices should I make. Because and this is all personal. This is how I struggled when I first went out to do the landscape stuff during the COVID times. I felt like I had too many options. What lens should I put on? And I got all the filters and the graduated filters and the reverse grad filters. And I was like, oh my God. And it was just too much. I felt like I had too many choices. And what I love about the phone is the quality, I just think, is amazing, and it's only going to get better. There's no question about that. But it's just the ease of it. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry about changing a lens or doing anything like that. We're going to talk about lenses in a minute. But yeah, well, how do you respond to what Judy said then?
I think, and I'm not. I think it's a false equivalence. I don't think it's a totally fair argument. I understand what she said. But, if you're trying, she's saying if you're trying to, you go into these lengths to make this thing look and feel like a camera, there is no comparison. If I were to take this and put, what's the 5X on the iPhone these days? It's 120 millimeter equivalent.
Yes.
So if I were to put, say, 70 to 200, or a lens that can get me to 100, even 120 millimeter prime, if there was such a thing. I mean, there's the Zeiss Bodice that's a 135. Point is, it's a false equivalence to say like, oh, well, why don't you just use this? Well, no, because this is huge and cumbersome. And like, it requires a whole separate bag that I need to take in order to handle this. It requires managing batteries and external media, that to write the images to. Whereas this, all we're saying is that this is just giving, I mean, it's insane just holding this. And then if I were to put my phone in here, it's not an exact fair argument to make. Now, you could say there are different ways to make it, I think, less of a false equivalence. But for me, I agree with you. The quality of the iPhone is, and let me rephrase that. The quality of just about any modern smartphone, to bring our Android brethren into the mix, is really, really good. And it's interesting because you could improve the quality of photo taken with this mid-cycle. Apple could be like, hey, we made some tweaks to our what's called their photonics engine. That is the thing when you watch their keynotes and stuff where it takes a photo and it splits them out into like 8 different or 12. Yeah. They can tweak those and release those updates as part of dot releases like iOS 18.3 if they want. And so improvements could be made almost on the fly. Whereas with your camera, I mean, camera manufacturers are notorious for just not improving with firmware unless there's like a bug. In some cases they are. I'm going to give credit where it's due. But point is, yeah, like I do love taking this thing. Like, in fact, we're probably later this afternoon, we're going to go back to one of the preserves. And this time I'm going more for the landscape style stuff, not bird photography. And I'm just going to take my iPhone because I know I can get great photos. Some of the photos I shared with you in that album, those are at the preserves, and they're more of a landscape mindset. And so again, it goes back to the intent. I just know that for bird photography, where I need longer reach, and I need things like 30 frame per second burst and pre-capture, things that maximize my ability to get the photo. Because at the end of the day, Glenn, if you're going out to take photos of birds, you want to maximize, you want every opportunity you can, of course, within your budget, to get a successful, sharp focus photo of a bird in flight, whatever, right? Like, isn't that the point? And so I'm blessed, I'm grateful that I'm able to get this camera. It's, I mean, I don't, it's obscenely priced. But I can tell you, at the very least, it's one of those things that you get what you pay for.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's just how
absolutely,
it is.
Yeah. All right, so there's a few things coming in. I'm going to bring up one because you know what I'm like. I've got to bring this one up here. Phil Ladbrook. I get the feeling that Phil doesn't like mobile photography. I don't know why. There's something that tells me he doesn't. But Phil's put, try putting your phone back in your jeans pocket with that handle on. I'll just show it, Phil, just so that you know, this thing here, here you go, look, you slide it in. You slide it in. Absolutely wouldn't. And no, I wouldn't obviously slide that into my back pocket because I've got buns of steel. There's no way it'd fit in the pocket. So I'd just slide it out, Phil, and I'd put it in my pocket and put that kit back in my bag. You know, that's what I'd do. But right, so another one from Phil. I'm not picking on you. I'm joshing now, right? But a serious thing here, because you did ask this: why use camera filters now when Lightroom can do the same? It can't. It can't do the same. I know that we've had the kind of early release of the reflection removal, but that does not allow you to do anything on car windows or water or anything like that. It's purely for windows where it literally is the window and you've got the window frame in and that's it. Anything else like that is going to struggle with. And it is obviously early release. It's in a test. So no, it doesn't do that. And if you've got a blown out, you know, no, there are certain things you have to use filters for. The main one I'm going to suggest would be with a mobile phone would be your circular polarizer. NDs, I didn't see that much benefit from them. If I'm honest, when I tried them before, I didn't find them any real point, but somebody out there could probably disagree. Brian, you might have a different opinion on it, but the one that I did feel that I benefited from was a circular polarizer.
Well,
go on. I know you have thoughts about the circular polarizer.
No, my 2-second thing is just because this thing is very computational heavy doesn't mean that I want to just hand off all of the creative process of the capture to it. And so in certain situations, yes, Glenn nailed it. Currently in Adobe Camera Raw and eventually in Lightroom, we'll have reflection removal. That doesn't mean that I want to just rely on that. That is despite my best efforts, for whatever reason, I had to get the shot and it had a reflection. But if I have a polarizer and I can do that optically, well, 10 times out of 10, I'm doing it. An ND filter, for the mobile side of things, the reason why I would use an ND filter is because we already established that 1 second is the longest you can set an exposure, an individual exposure. And so because you and I both enjoy doing those long exposure photos, you can maximize the quality of those long exposures by getting the base exposure to a second. And then let's say you want to do 10 seconds. Well, then instead of it being 100 photos at 1/10 of a second or 1/100th of a second stitched together, I'd rather have 10 1-second photos. That will look a lot smoother, those transitions. It'll just look a lot better. Using an app like what's a
long exposure?
Long exposure or even longer. Or
I know
something.
what you mean. Re-expose. Yeah, I know.
Re-expose.
I'm playing.
Yeah.
Listen,
I couldn't remember because re-held it. Yeah.
I thought you were playing a game then. Listen, I want to just something that you mentioned there. Then I'm going to share my screen here because it's interesting what you say there about the longer ones. You know, you don't want that stepping, and I know exactly what you mean. I'm going to try and see if I can find some that are in my portfolio here. If I just bring up, in fact, no, over on my website. Let me just bring my website up. Here, go to here, go to portfolio. And landscape ski set. So the majority of these images are here all going to be taken using my iPhone. So let me give you an example. So this one here then, talking about that stepping thing that you mentioned there, this one here is a 30-second exposure. And that you won't see the stepping. You just, you know, there just isn't any stepping in that one. But if I go down to, now it's further down here, there's one where I did like a 1/2 second exposure. I think you might see it on this one here. It might be difficult to see it on this here. Let me see if I can find it. There's one that's one of my favorite pictures, and you can actually see it in the actual shot. This isn't me just getting a cheap shot so you can see all my pictures, mind. You might say, right, if you if you go to my portfolio and look on this one here, there's a little bit of that stepping that you can see on the water where it's crashing up against the water, the waves there, the wall there, and you can see it in this bottom corner. So I remember when we were more involved with the guys from Reflex, and originally their re-expose app that you mentioned there was that you could do long exposures from 1 second to bulb, the equivalent of bulb, right? And I said to them, but if I'm photographing waves, I want it to be half a second. I want half, because 1 second smooths it out too much. When you've got a wave crashing and you want to capture all the detail there, I want half a second. And they said, well, we can do it, but because there's less files or to blend together to smooth out, you are going to see a bit of stepping. So you do see it in that. So, but even the, you know, like what you're saying there, that's why you'd find a way or reason to use the ND. For me,
right,
I don't want to sit and have to do all that. Maybe I'm not. Listen, I'm far from being a lazy person. That's one thing I've never been accused of being. But it kind of takes the fun out of it for me when I have to really go, right, so if I get 10 of that, 10 times that, no.
Right.
I'm doing this. I love doing this. I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I'm really happy with the portfolio that I've got. I know that if I showed those images to somebody who didn't know me and didn't know that I took pictures with my phone, they would never, I don't think they'd ever say they were taken with a mobile phone. So I'm really happy with it. It's not for everybody. It's not
absolutely.
For, you know. But
I mean,
go on. I want to quickly bring this up because this is nice to see. This is, and again, we're not sort of saying one's better than the other. It's just what, you know, personal experience, what's right for the job and stuff like that. But Graham Taylor, Graham's put, interesting conversation. After 40 years as a pro, I chose to use the iPhone. We'll put / mobile photography instead of a DSLR when I retired. Once I re-educated myself to mobile cameras, I absolutely love it. And then he's then followed on by, should also add, last week I used a Canon R5 and that it reinforced my decision. Only filters I now use is a polarizer. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, that's interesting, Graham, that you say really the only one you find you get a need for is a polarizer. Interesting. All right. Sorry, mate. What were you going to say? Was because I know there's something to bring up.
Well, I'm curious what you want to bring up. Maybe it's the same thing, but it's more of the kind of some of the technical. So you brought up how, like, okay, because if I use an ND filter and I want to dial in say the ISO and the shutter speed, there is an unfortunate limitation with that. We talked about this yesterday, where you are automatically kicked down to 12 megapixels, which is a supreme, going way back to this earlier in this conversation where I said, if you're calling this a pro thing, like, that's not a pro feature. If I want to manually set the shutter speed and the ISO in an app, because you can't even do that really in the native camera app, well, the 48 megapixel, I put air quotes around that. It's, you know, that drops down to 12, which is supremely frustrating. What my kind of workaround with that was, okay, you're going to limit that. Some of the photos you shared in my album that I shared, those are kind of panos, or I'll just take 4 or 6 images, you know, let's say 3 images in one row, 3 images down second row, and I'll stitch them together to create an effective single image. Not necessarily a pano, but something more like a 3x2 or and then I'll get increased resolution when I stitch them together. Point is that it's those little workarounds that annoy me as well. I am getting to that point, like you, Glenn, where I just want to focus on taking the photo. I know that the phone is going to do the job for me, you know, and I don't want to fuff around with like all these little things.
Yeah. So, well, we'll talk about little things in a minute. But before we do, I just want to bring up my friend Phil again. Phil's put, sorry, Gary. Now, I presume that's me. Sorry, which is Glyn. So sorry, Gary / Glyn. I'm not picking on you. Thank you. But would you use your iPhone to video a film, or would you use a Red camera? Phil, I definitely wouldn't use a Red camera because I don't own one, but I would use my Sony FX3, as I have done for some commercial video work that I've done in the past. I wouldn't use my phone. No, I think you're missing the point of this conversation. We're talking about the right tool for the right job and what you feel you get the most enjoyment out of doing. when you're doing commercial stuff, you use stuff that's the most appropriate. Anyway, right, talking about little things then. Before, when we were doing stuff with reflex, we had lenses. There were lenses that me and you were initially on board with, and we kind of thought, this is fantastic. And we did, you know, both of us did promote the use of these particular lenses. Now, being completely honest, and I know it's the same for you, I don't use lenses with my phone. Now, I want us to talk about that. But before we do, I'm going to bring up something that Russell Brown talked about when I got him on, because I did ask him about it. Now, Russell is prolific with his iPhone. His portraits that he takes with his phone are incredible. But I want to just play this little section here when I asked Russell about using lenses with his phone. When you said that, it made me think about, you know, companies that do produce third-party lenses and stuff like that, you know, to expand the capabilities of things like the iPhone and the Samsung and whatever. What's your opinion on those? Have you ever tried them? Do you use them? Or
here, over here, I have an answer. So good of you to ask. Now, this is nothing against all those companies, but I do not use them. I do not think it's worth your time and effort. Oh my gosh, here it comes, to carry around those lenses. You can, I don't think they aid to your photography. I think they slow you down. You said it. The iPhone or the phone photography is all about speed, capturing the moment. I used to use those lenses, but I think Apple and Samsung have stepped up and brought us a really nice wide angle and a really nice telephoto. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, I don't recommend it. I think you stick with the lenses that are in your phone and don't fool around with it.
Okay. So yeah, that's from Russell. Now you'll say what you'll say about it, but for me, I remember the big thing for me was that I got my wife Anne. I know we've mentioned this, but I mentioned it before. When we got all those lenses from Reflex, which are incredibly well built, there's no denying it, they're really, really well built. When we got them, we kind of went out to do the filming for the lenses to show what they're capable of and how you use them and stuff like that. And I remember having all these lenses and all these filters. And first of all, I was like, oh my God, look how much kit there is. And that immediately was like an alarm bell for me, because I used the phrase that mobile photography all of a sudden became immobile. Do you know what I mean? It was like, oh my Lord, look at all this stuff. I've now got the problem I used to have before when I was trying to do seascapes with my camera, of having too much choice. So there was that. That was the first thing. But also I remember when I was using these, putting these lenses on and the filters and another filter, my wife, who isn't a photographer, she just said, oh my God, what a faff. How fiddly is that? And I was like, do you know what? It kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I went, do you know what? You're right. You are so right. This is just fiddly. This is for me, and I guess, and yes, we have had, relations with Reflex, get on well with them. Might not do after this, but it's a case of, but I just thought, do you know what? You're right. It's making mobile photography feel messy. Do you know what I mean? Because when I use a phone to take my pictures and I do stuff like that, I am right in the moment. I'm loving where I am. Technicalities aren't distracting me from where I am. So I'm completely absorbed in the whole place. I love it. I get my thing set up. I know what I do, taking a shot, enjoying it. Lovely, lovely, lovely. But I found these lenses just got in the way. Now, I know there was a big thing, and they have released a lens which definitely does work. I can't deny it. They updated their 2x telephoto that you can put onto the iPhone and onto Android. It's compatible with the Android. And from the iPhone side of things, it will increase your 5x lens to the equivalent of 240mm. Fantastic. I never use 240mm. I never use that focal length. So I just don't use the lenses. I just don't use them, and I find them to be a faff. And I'm very much in Russell's camp that I don't need them. What's your feelings on this, Brian?
It's funny because there's a weird, I don't know if maybe a paradox, but it's supposed to make you more versatile. That's kind of I think the part of the idea of it. And I actually, for me, found it to be the opposite, because for me, versatile is I take my phone and I'm composing and I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe the 0.5 lens, the ultra wide lens is better here, or the 5x lens. And I just tap a button and boom, it's there. And when you have a lens on, that's it. It cannibalizes pretty much the entire camera assembly. And so you can't use any other lens. And so now I'm kind of like more focused on, okay, I need to take this thing off. And, you know, I do consider myself somewhat, you know, responsible, but I'm very ginger about it, taking it off, and I have to find that little tiny rear lens cap and, you know, put it away. And I know this is kind of like champagne problems, you know, woe is me, but I found myself, again, in some cases, I do see a little bit of like the macro lenses could be fun. I rarely use macro, period. It's just not my thing. But when they sent me this is that 2x lens.
Oh, that's a 2x lens. Yeah.
And I went out to Palm Beach over here, and I mean, it was a challenge. It's too much focal length for that kind of the photography that I was trying to get. Then I went out to, all right, let me see if I can photograph birds. And with the exception of those two birds that were perched on the banister and they weren't moving, like they made it easy for me, it's just not possible for me to get good shots. It just wasn't. And I'm not knocking them. It's simply the nature of this particular phone with that lens. I mean, there are considering.
But there's also something I found, I don't know if you experienced this, is when you've got such a small, you know, it is a chunky bit of kit, but in photography terms, it's a small bit of kit. You know what I mean? Something that's going to give you 240mm focal range that's this big here. What I found was when I put it onto the phone, and this is being completely honest because that's what I like to be, when I put this small little thing on the back of my phone to get 240mm, I found that the slightest movement was massively exaggerated, massively. Yes. Whereas if I had my Sony and I put a 70-200 on and I racked out to 200mm, because it's got much more kind of body to it, just a slight movement. It was only a slight change in what I was kind of focusing on. Whereas this small thing, a tiny little movement was like, whoa, way off.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So there was that. But also with it, and I noticed Stuart Wood's in there. I want to ask Stuart a question in a minute. And one thing I also noticed or made me think about it was, and the prime example was that sunset picture that I took the other day. There is always a tripod in my car. You know, always in the boot of my car, I've got a tripod. Now, obviously, I've always got my phone with me. Now, I went down to Lyme Regis not with the intention of taking photos, not at all. I went there to clear my head. I had a few kind of things, conferences I'm working on. I couldn't think of the wording, so I always find when I go down by the sea, my head just clears and I'm really active, and that's it. So I went down there. It just so happens I dropped on. It's like, holy crap, look at the sunset. Phone out the pocket, tripod from the boot, whacked it on it, and then took a shot with it. Now, no, I didn't have my Shift Cam Pro, whatever it's called, grip yet, which hasn't turned up, which I'm a bit concerned about because they've not replied to me yet either. But they hadn't turned up, but it didn't matter. So having what I'm saying here in a very long-winded way is, what I also love about doing pictures with my phone is that I don't have to go, oh, I must remember to take that out with me. Do you know what I mean? I've got everything I need in my hand. It's there. Do you know what I mean?
What was the tripod for?
The tripod, because I was doing like half-second exposures and stuff like that, capturing the waves. So it was, you know, ordinarily I'd kind of like bang, bang, bang. But I like to do half-a-second exposure. I just like that kind of look. Yeah, I don't... All this kit and what have you, it sounds good, but for me, it was making it more like it was when I started to do something with 𝐶scape. It gave me too many options, and too many choices for me kills creativity. It's just me.
Yeah.
It might be different for somebody else, but if I have too much choice, too many decisions to make, my creativity just drops. When I'm doing something with a piece of kit that allows me to remain in the moment and enjoy my environment, my creativity just goes up and my success rate goes up. Just like it does when I'm taking portraits with my Sony, because that's my happy place. I'm very happy. I'm very familiar with it. Nothing distracts me from the person I'm photographing. The kit doesn't. You know what I mean? But it did distract me when I was using it to do seascapes. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, I've been thinking more, I think it was Phil who was kind of challenging, not say challenging us, but like, you know, why wouldn't you, you know, would you use a red? And I think one of the hallmarks of a seasoned or a professional photographer, someone like us who, I mean, this is not our first rodeo. We've been around the block. Is
I like that saying.
knowing,
Cool.
yeah,
not my first rodeo.
Not our first rodeo. A few things. One, it's not in our best interest to use something that will provide us with subpar results. Like if this thing just didn't perform, I wouldn't use it. I'm not paid by Apple. I have absolutely no affiliation with them whatsoever. Why would I intentionally kneecap myself? So I'm not trying to, like, you know, again, try to shove a square peg through a round hole.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. The other thing is I've illustrated that I will use the best device for the type of photography. Again, I got this thing because it's the best device. I can't, maybe there is someone out there who can get the kind of photos that I need this camera for. Like, and I had an A7R5, a Sony. That was what I traded in using. You made a post about trading in some gear to MPB.
That's right.
I did the same thing. I traded my A7R5. I got a fair price. Point is, that camera, it's a wonderful camera if all I was doing is landscape, and I miss landscape. I miss it so much. But my life now, where I am here, it's primarily bird photography. I'm making the most of it. I'm learning a new type of photography, the challenges, and that's exciting. And I got the tool that maximizes my success. So it's like the point of all this is saying, like we know what we can get out of it. Like you and I are comfortable enough to know that we can pull out every little drop of quality out of this thing in various ways. So it's not like we're making compromise. I guess that's the ultimate thing. I don't feel like I'm making any compromises with this. There are some frustrations. There are some things like, you know, that annoy me. But in those situations, another hallmark of us being seasoned photographers is that knowing how to work around it with the software at hand, you know, type of thing where like, okay, well, if I'm dropping to 12 megapixels, I know that I have these upscaling options in Lightroom, for example, like with super resolution, or I know that I can use the AI denoise if for whatever reason it's just noisy because I had to, you know, drop my ISO because I wanted a longer exposure type of thing. And I think that there's some value to that. And it's not just you and me. Don't get me, this is not, I'm sure there are many fine photographers in the chat right now or who will be watching the replays who that is, I think, one of the hallmarks of a photographer is like knowing how to get the most out of the tools you have and knowing how to buttress that with the software that you have on your computer or on your phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally. I'm conscious of time, but I want to just we're kind of in a roll. There was a question I was going to ask Stuart, but I noticed Stuart's posted this up now. Let's just bring this up, Stuart. Stuart, you'll remember he was a guest on the live. Incredible macro photographer. Beautiful stuff he does. The one thing that the 240mm, we're talking about the reflex, the 2x one here now. He's good at is macro photography with a great working distance. Now, yes, Stuart, I saw some of the stuff that you did. I saw the video that you did on behalf of Reflex showing how you were doing your macro photography with it. Question for you, because I know you'll be able to put this in the thing there. The thing about the macros, I remember it, is when you were on the live, you talked about how you'll take multiple pictures and it'll do that, you know, kind of a blend. You'll do a blend then of where you've done different focal points so that you get a greater depth of field when you're doing the macro. are you doing that with this? Or are you still getting kind of like, say, the front of the jumping spider as an example in focus and the rest of it is going out? Is that what you're getting? Or have you worked out how you can get it to be all in focus using the phone as well? So that's what I'm intrigued about. My friend Anthony has put, I totally agree that faffing about. I noticed that Jean-Francois and Judy are loving this because they're learning a new language, words that I'm using. Like fiddle about and whatever. Totally agree that faffing about with additional kit and lenses kills creativity. Yeah. However, I do enjoy going out for a day of landscape photography with my main camera and slowing down. Totally. Absolutely, Anthony. Yeah, absolutely. Which reminds me, we need to get back and do some of that. And it is all kind of, that's the thing, isn't it? It's all about slowing down. But I'm guessing as well, Anthony, that when you're doing it, the reason you can slow down is because you're familiar with the kit, and you've also, if I know you well enough, you've also not given yourself too many options when it comes to kit that you have to hand. Do you know what I mean? You're going there with a certain amount of stuff that you've got minimal choices so that you can just zone in and enjoy where you are. That's what I get the feeling of. Stuart's replied. He's put, yes, regarding that focusing. Yes, I am. I use camera pixels for focus stacking. Well, I'm intrigued now how you're getting the different. Yeah, I'm intrigued now how you're getting that different. Oh yeah, when you all right, okay. We need to speak. Might have to get you back on for that. Let's have a quick look here and going through some of the questions. Yeah, Anthony's put absolutely. I know you. Andy H has put phone versus expensive mirrorless camera. It's all a moot point if your eye for a photo and composition skills are not there. And that's exactly what we're saying here as well, isn't it? That's kind of like a little side note to what we're saying here. The kit doesn't make the photographer, just like the cooker doesn't make the chef. I don't know if that is a saying. I've just made it up, whatever. But you know what I mean? It's the thing, isn't it? Like some people say, yeah, well, your phone does all that computational stuff. I couldn't give my phone to my neighbour's 6-year-old to say, right, come down with me to Lyme Regis. And I'm not saying, oh, check me out. It wouldn't come back with pictures that I'm doing. There is experience there that I've got, lighting. When me and Steve went out today, there was potentially going to be a good sunrise, but there was so much cloud cover that we saw the arse end of the sun and it disappeared. And then that was it. So it was a very low contrast, flat day, great day, and there was nothing. So there was no keepers from that day. So regardless of what this phone is capable of doing, if the light isn't there and the subject matter isn't there, you're not going to get the shot. It's as simple as that. You've still got to have the eye. Do you know what I mean? Of course, you know what I mean.
It's basically what I said at the beginning. Like you put the right thing in front with the right light, the camera will do the heavy lifting, but the camera will not know to like, oh, this is what you need to take the photo of. That's on you. So. Yeah,
sure. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm just going to play, I know we're over time here at the minute, but if you're okay with it, I'll just play a 2-minute vid because I want to put that poll up. We'll come back and we'll kind of do a bit of a wrap up here. I'll have a quick look at some of the questions and stuff. What's Judy put here now? Look, add to that. The cooker doesn't make the chef. I'm gonna write a book of Glyn's sayings. It might be censored though, Judy. It might be censored. All right, let me just quickly play this ad, and then we'll look at wrapping this up. But yeah, well, there's so much you could talk about with this. Right, okay, back in a minute, Brian. All right, I'll just play this one. Here we go. So, folks, quick video, and we'll be back. Do you know what? I was trying to put that poll together there, but it just keeps saying, oh, the question's too long. It just says, Mini course of editor using Lightroom only, yes or no? Oh, question's too long. Whatever.
Too long.
Folks, let me know in the comments, yes or no. Mini course of the editor showing how all the editing steps are done using Lightroom, including the colored background, the spotlight, the dodging and burning, the bringing the eyes up, making the cigar look like it's a light, and all that stuff, all done in Lightroom. Impressive stuff. Happy days. Right, okay, so where were we when? What's a couple of things here? Let's have Lenny Hulse. Chuffed. I'm chuffed. Chuffed a bit. It's another one of Glenn's sayings. All right, let's have a quick. I think I sort of tried to highlight some of these. There's a lot of questions, a lot of comments coming in. Yes. Cool. All right. I guess I'll put it together then. Because
there's Stuart.
Okay, so
he clinched
Stuart
it.
Was. Well, yeah. Okay, Stuart. Seeing as you said yes, I'll. We'll definitely do that. All right. Was there anything else that I wanted to bring up about this? Okay, the future then. What the future? How do you see this going? It's just, I know you haven't got a crystal ball and you can't predict the future, but what are your feelings from looking at the past and how things have progressed? What do you see happening with all of this kind of mobile photography stuff? Because for one, I just see it getting better and better and better for what it's intended for me, for seascapes and stuff like that. Actually, there was a question here from Jean-Francois. He said, where is it? I probably can't find it now. He did say, can you trigger strobes using the iPhone? Yes, you can. Russell Brown uses it all the time, although he's using a lot of Westcott stuff now, the old constant light. But ProPhoto do make a strobe and an app that you can trigger the light with using your iPhone. And another company that I'm connected with are working on one as we speak. All right, cool. So, yeah, what do you see happening? Because I just see it getting better and better and better. There are things that I wish. Let me just say what I wish would happen. Even though I do read Mac rumors and they don't really know what's going on. I wish that when I was using an app other than the main camera app, that when I adjusted something to do with the actual camera taking process, like if I manually went into manual mode, let's say, and adjusted the shutter speed or whatever, or the ISO, that it didn't jump from 48 down to 12. I wish it didn't do that. I know it's a fake kind of 48, but it is a better quality. I wish it didn't do that. That's my hope for the future, that doesn't happen, because surely that can't be a difficult thing not to happen. Otherwise, I might be having to get a Samsung phone as well. So I've got two different things like Russell does for taking his pictures. But what about you? What do you think's what's going to be going on?
I think it's same as you. I would love for Apple to open up ProRAW. The reason why it drops to 12 is because you're now dropping out of ProRAW and you're just using you're saving a Bayer DNG file. And so I wish Apple would open that up to developers more. Apple allows third-party developers to save ProRAW, but you can't change anything. So I would love to see that. I would love to see a unified sensor system where all lenses have the same 48 megapixels, same quality. It always seems like one lens is kind of like the redheaded stepkid who just gets the not as good. And so I would love to see them treat all three lenses equally. We are seeing improvements on the latter side of things, meaning the post-processing. Like, again, we talk about Lightroom Mobile. Well, Lightroom now, up until a couple months ago, you could only use the AI denoise with those Bayer RAW, those 12 megapixel RAW, which is why I would shoot in RAW as opposed to ProRAW, is because Lightroom's denoise, if you haven't used it with an iPhone, I mean, it does a really good job, all biases aside. But now we've expanded the model to support ProRAW. So even if you shoot ProRAW, you can use the AI denoise model in Lightroom. And so obviously that's Lightroom Desktop and Lightroom Classic. It's not available yet in mobile, I must admit,
when you mentioned that ProRAW there, Brian, I know I said about, I wish they wouldn't drop down 48. My other wish to kind of link on to that is that ProRAW how it currently is, where they apply some kind of, there is a noise reduction in it. So it's not a true RAW. There is a form of processing going on. I just wish Apple would be honest and say, look, this is not RAW. Call it something else. Don't use RAW because it's not RAW. You've done something to it. Give us a 48 megapixel file, if you're able to, that is untouched, or let's just keep it at 12 because we can interpolate the image to be bigger like I did that, to 72 inches and it stood up. Ian, who's in there as well, in the chat, I saw my mate Ian. I mean, he helped me hang it up in his studio and he was so impressed with it that came from an iPhone or a mobile device. So either give us a true RAW or don't. Simple as that.
I'll close out it seems like for the past few years, Apple's really been catering to the video side of things. So all the video features that you've been getting, like with the, being able to do, it is. I mean, it's
Andy H, I do agree.
Yeah. It's a lossy DNG file. But they are catering to the videographer side of the creative. And I do wish that they would, all right, well, this year we're going to focus back on the photographer. And so I would like to see that.
Cool. All right. Well, it's been an interesting discussion. We've gone on for an hour and a quarter. I know we could go on for a lot longer. We could go on
easy.
We could really go on with this. And maybe give it a few months and we'll talk about some more things. Maybe leave it until the new iPhone comes out or the new Android, whatever comes out. Sure. If there's anybody out there or if you know anybody that's kind of really into the mobile, and I say this to you, Brian, as well, but also to people watching, if you know anybody that's really into the mobile photography side of things, but is a Samsung and Android user, then let us know. Because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you now, when it comes to mobile photography, people who put themselves out there and you get to see and hear about, I don't hear and see of people who are using Samsung and Android. And that's not to say they're not there, it's just where I'm looking. All right. So if you do know people that are using that as their thing and they're creating some great images, let me know because I'd love to get them on so that we can have a chat about that side of things as well. All right, there you go. You do know someone.
One person who I would say, so there's he's a friend, he's a Zeiss ambassador. His name is Kenneth Hines. His handle is Professor Hines. I know Kenneth shoots, I think almost exclusive, he shoots Sony, but on the mobile side, he uses the Sony Xperia, which has Zeiss lenses. Yeah. And so if there's someone that you're kind of thinking about or you want, he's someone, Kenneth Hines.
All right, well, let's speak about that then. That'd be interesting to get, because it's always good to hear. I don't want to appear that we are purely, Apple, iPhone, but that's what we use. That's all we can talk about, which is why when we do talk about it, generally it's a / mobile photography. By the way, you just seen this comment here. Look, Andy H. Great conversation. Have to admit, Brian is one of my favorite guests of yours, Glyn.
Oh. The check is in the mail, Andy. What's your send me the PayPal address.
Lovely stuff. Well, listen, mate, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I really, really have. We haven't come to any kind of conclusion. That wasn't the intention. It was purely to kind of get it out there and let you know some things that I've experienced, you've experienced, how thoughts have maybe changed, what our feelings are with regards to kit. Because one thing that I can say, me and Brian are very, very good friends. We do click, and I think part of that is because we just, what you see is what you get. Do you know what I mean? We're able to have conversations where the gloves come off, and we can just talk about. There's nothing that me and Brian can't talk to each other about, and that's what I love about him, and that's why I've got him on, and so that's why this conversation's gone ahead, and it's so that we can just, those of you who know us will know that we are just, we'll tell it as it is. It's honest. We'll try to do it eloquently. Sometimes I do fall foul. But do you know what I mean? What you see is what you get, and we'll be honest with you. And if there's something that I don't think is worth having, no, don't do that because my camera doesn't do that. I don't know why.
I want to get the hearts. It will not work. I wanted the heart.
Get that one going. So if there's kit that we think is worth trying, we'll say. If it's not, then I know, good. If there's kit that's worth trying out, then we'll mention it. If there isn't, we won't. And if there's stuff that we think, look, this is good, it's not for us, but it might be good for you, like Stuart Wood is using that two times reflex lens there to get the 240mm, which works perfectly for doing the macro. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I hope this has made sense. I just wanted to get it out. I know there was some things that you wanted to mention there, Brian, as well. Let's see if there's anything else. Judy, good old Judy. She's put, this has been a wonderful conversation, always are, but this one gave me a better understanding of what all the hype is about using a mobile phone. Brilliant. Well, there you go. Mission accomplished. Wonderful stuff. And you've learnt some new words. Even better. And yeah, Lee Churchill, MPB is my friend. Talking to that, actually, one thing I didn't mention was, no, did I mention this? I'd got rid of some lenses and I used MPB.
You shared a story or a post about it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, because what I did was, just in wrapping up, what I did, because I felt this need that I need to go out with my main camera to do these same shots, I actually sold some of my lenses. I traded them in with MPB. So I got rid of a 55 prime, a 35 prime, my 85mm prime, my G Master, and a 70-200. I traded those in and I got a 24-105 f4, which will be an all-rounder. It's a great lens. I've used Ian Munro, my mate Ian Munro, he let me use it when I was doing a portrait and it was pin sharp. So I'll be very, very happy with that. But it also gives me choices if I do want to take the camera out to do some stuff, to do the landscapey, seascapey stuff. But honestly, I don't know if I will. I really don't know if I will. I don't know if I will. But there you go. So Brian, to wrap up, things have changed for you. You're now on the Lightroom. You work with Adobe. You're on the Lightroom team. Anything that you want to mention at all? Anywhere that people should be checking out to see what's going on and stuff like that?
I mean,
I know you can't tell secrets. I know that.
Yeah, I can't talk product roadmaps, but I can say that the team is working on some very, very, very cool stuff. I do work on the Lightroom desktop team as a software quality engineer. But I still create content. Like as soon as we're done here, I'm going to record this week's YouTube video. And yeah, that's my website is just, my Matiash.com. And so, it's always a pleasure, Glenn. I mean, so people don't know this, but I'll often, if I go, let's say a week or two without talking with Glenn, I'm like, I need my Glenn time. Like it's a therapy session, very much so. So yeah, thank you for letting me be on, thrice, and hopefully we'll make it a fourth time. And
we will do. And I'll give you a no promo reel as well. We'll do that.
Oh, and that was very.
It can only consist of A12 pictures. All right.
I can make that happen.
All right. Okay. Cool. All right. We'll do that, mate. I'll see you in the virtual green room in a mo. I'll just close this down, let people know a few things. But yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I'll mute you and I'll see you in a mo. All right, mate.
Sounds good.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, very active chat room. I knew it would be. It is a potentially controversial subject, but I hope that came across that it wasn't meant to be. It was literally just to say, look, this is the situation. Those of you who know me know that I'm using my mobile phone for doing the seascapes, not the portraits, the seascape stuff. And I'm just thoroughly enjoying it because it allows me to be in the moment. And I just wanted to kind of let you know my side of things regards to my feelings on the kit, where that is, and also let you know what Brian's thoughts are with how things are going for him as well with it. But yeah, I'll put some links in the discussion in the blog post in the description of this video tomorrow. There are a few things I need to kind of put in there for you. Just a reminder about the admin side of things. Thank you. I will put this together because honestly, even doing that work I have over the last few weeks with Adobe, diving into parts of Lightroom, problem solving things in Lightroom that ordinarily I wouldn't have to because I was working on other person's images where they'd had challenges with exposure and all sorts of different things. God, it really makes you think, and it really does, diving into certain parts of Lightroom that you wouldn't normally touch. And it's made I feel my knowledge and skill level within Lightroom just go way up. It really, really has. So I'll share that with you. Also to say that, if you do want me to have a look at some of your maybe problem images that maybe would have been a throwaway. I know, Judy, you did send over some images, like a composite thing. Wonderful that you did, but I'm not looking to do the composite thing. All right. But wonderful that you sent that over. But I have had a few people send some things in, but let them send them over if you want to. There's the details again. Share it to my Adobe email address just there, my Adobe account email address. If you create an album or a collection, make sure that it's to edit and contribute rather than just view, so that I can actually do something with them, and I'll look at bringing those in. But as for next week, it will be a guest next week. Greg Benz is the guy who's coming on. Can't wait. I cannot wait. Follow. I'll put the details for him in the description, but follow him anyway, because this guy is the HDR guy. He really is. His knowledge on it is amazing. We're not talking HDR from so many years ago where it was over-processed, overcooked stuff. We're talking photos that are just very, very natural. The exposure on all the areas, just like the eye sees it. It's incredible. What this guy does is incredible, and he's going to fill us in how we do it, things we can do to improve it, and how we can display it. It's going to be great next week. I'm really looking forward to that. So that's that. Brian's got a new video coming out tomorrow. He says he's recording a video tomorrow, so keep an eye on that. I'll put a link for his YouTube. I'm going to be recording one tomorrow as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on. But folks, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for contributing. Phil, if you're still there, I still love you. I know you weren't picking on me, and I wasn't picking on you either, but I do sometimes have to stand my ground. But there you go. Love you and leave you, folks. See you next week. Same time, same place for Greg Ben's 7 p.m. UK here on YouTube only. We're not streaming onto Facebook now because for some reason Facebook thinks I'm using some kind of automation thing and it threatened to close my page. So only YouTube. Thanks for being there. I will see you next week.